Hi, thanks for watching this video. If you like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and please leave comments down below on what you think about it. And if you have any other ideas for videos you would like to see me make and explore related to design thinking, employee experience, and other kinds of experiences, make sure you leave that in the comment section as well. In my school's MBA program, I teach a graduate course on employee experience. And recently in that course, one of my students asked a great question on our discussion board. And part of that question was, is it possible for a leader to transition from an old system to a new one without it causing friction or strife? I think we can all agree that change can be really difficult. We can talk about change management and trying to make it easier to transition. But that doesn't get around the fact that anytime we make changes to long established patterns, it's going to be difficult. Beyond it being difficult, it can also be a challenge to maintain that change. Once we get started trying to make a change, there can be a tendency to take the road most traveled, to fall back on those old habits, to do the way we always did things, to go back into our old familiar patterns. Even though we may know those old ways are going to yield the same outcomes, there is a comfort in that familiarity. So in order to make changes, we often need the help of others to envision, initiate, and sustain those changes. For those who see themselves as leaders, and really for anybody, it can be difficult to seek that help. It can be difficult to ask others for help and to show that we're vulnerable and that we need help. This is where things can start to break down before they even have a chance to start. When we don't seek the help we need, we might not be able to even start making the changes that we need to make. When students were discussing this question in the online forum, it in many ways reminded me of recovery work. In 12-step programs, the first 3 steps are about understanding the need to change because the status quo isn't working, realizing that one can't do it on their own and that they are in need of some kind of assistance, and then deciding to let a quote-unquote power greater than oneself provide that assistance and guidance. These first 3 steps are often abbreviated to I can't, God can, I'll let him, or her, or them, or however you think about God. It can be really easy for people to get hung up on this idea of God in these programs and in this equation. But in recovery programs that I'm familiar with, it's always emphasized that when we're talking about God, we're really talking about a God of your understanding. It's literally anything that you can tap into that's external to yourself that you can use to help manage and deal with the world around you and really let things go that are beyond your control. And at the end of the day, most things are beyond our control. And so talking about this power involves finding a source from which you can find support, that you can get support to help you navigate these changes. This is why recovery meetings are so important, especially when trying to establish and work a program to change. Those meeting rooms become a source of support, a kind of higher power of wisdom and guidance that we really do need the help and assistance of something greater than ourselves. And often that thing greater than ourselves are others who we can rely on. So what does recovery work have to do with organizational change and the question that was first asked by the student? Well, first, it can take a lot of courage to decide that a change is needed and to make initial steps to make the change. In fact, one of the books used in Al-Anon is called, quote, Courage to Change. The first step on that journey to change can be the most difficult one, either to know that change is needed or to try to figure out how change can happen in the first place. Second, in making that change, we have to admit that we are powerless to do it all on our own. If we could do it on our own, we would have done it already. And organizations don't change for the better just because a leader or someone in a position of power or authority decides that this change is necessary. The leader is in many ways powerless to make change without the help of others. Those others are people in the organization, many of whom have important perspectives and experiences regarding how to make that change possible. If a leader tries to do it on their own, not only are they not going to succeed, but they're going to miss the opportunity to use that wealth of perspectives and experiences to help make that change occur. Third, when doing recovery work, it's important to identify and acknowledge things we have done wrong, share them with others, and be willing to make amends. Those amends can be either direct, where we make amends directly to a person, or indirect, where we just change our behavior as a way of rectifying a situation. Indirect amends are really important when making direct amends may cause harm to the person we're making amends to. Making amends creates a kind of clean slate, frees us from hanging on to these past mistakes, and allows us to refresh relationships that may have been damaged in the past. It's a way of starting over. But the first step to starting over is admitting the role we had in making the things the way they were. And by making amends, we identify our own role in the problem and how we can rectify that going forward. Leaders, of course, can benefit from this as well. What were the exact nature of our wrongdoings? When we were wrong, do we promptly admit it? Do we make amends when possible? And do we change what we do? Fourth, there's a saying in 12-step work that goes, we need to, quote, let go and let God. This means that we have to let go our sense that we control everything and turn over things we cannot control to a power greater than ourselves. And again, most things we can't control. While this might have some kind of spiritual connotation, it also has very practical connotation as well. That power greater than ourselves can be the people in our lives that we need to rely on, since we cannot do it all on our own. The same can be said for leaders and organizations. The power greater than ourselves can be the people in the organization. There are many, if not most, situations in which a leader just has to, quote unquote, let go and let God, enabling people who are part of the organization to help and not try to control everything. If we think about someone trying to micromanage, we know what that can feel like, that this person is trying to exert control over everything around them, rather than letting go and letting the people who are present do the things that they know how to do. This reminds me of another saying that comes from Sufism, which goes, trust in God, but tie your camel to the post. Meaning that even though we might put our faith in a higher power, it doesn't mean we avoid the practical things that we need to do in order to avoid something bad happening. So letting go and letting God doesn't mean that we don't engage at all. It means that in things we can't control or shouldn't try to control, we let that go and we cede that over to others to take care of. One part of 12-step work is that we need to, quote, practice these principles in all our affairs. Anyone who has been involved in 12-step work knows that these principles, whether the steps, the traditions, the slogans, are applicable beyond recovery. They can be used in all aspects of our lives in order to improve our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with others, and to improve the world around us. Applying these principles, these slogans, these traditions, these acronyms to organizational change thus can make a lot of sense. And me speaking personally, I've found tremendous benefit from applying these principles in my affairs and finding ways to work the program of recovery in other aspects of my life. So, going back to the original question, any transition from one system to another is going to involve some amount of friction. Then again, friction can be essential for growth. We shouldn't avoid friction. Rather, we should think about how we can grow, not just on our own, but through the help of others. And when changing systems, it's not something that we can just do on our own, but through a power that goes beyond us. That power exists in the people that are around us, but only if we accept their assistance and only if we accept that we need them to make a change.